talked about, the River Coalition actually talked about 40, a plan that was called 4C13307 in this Perdido analysis. And that actually had only about 10,000 acre feet going to the S308. But in this new CC plan, when you heard Ben Hobart say, well, the estuary is not going to get any discharges, it's always been the framework of CC, when you go down that decision tree schedule, is 0 coming out of S80. When they talk about this water going to the St. Lucie estuary of 72,000, you heard Congressman Mass, used to be without, it was 187, now it's going to be 72, which is better. But that's going to through the S308 at Lake Okeechobee, not through S80. So S80 is kind of holding the line, but Kim, on the recent schedule, when they talk about this in the PDT meeting this past week, this was showing that even at the high levels, there will be S80 discharges out of S80 in zones B and C in wet periods of 3,600 CFS. So to understand this, they are saying that in those higher bands, and unlike what started out as CC, now it's kind of going to this, well, in these higher bands, we are going to have to discharge to the St. Lucie through S80. So understand there are already changes from what was the original framework of CC to now this framework of CC. So it's something we're having to stay on top of as this kind of goes through the process. And I really appreciate everybody. And if you don't understand all these details, and I know it's a lot, some of us been involved in this day to day all the time, get it, but if you haven't got that understanding, you want to, please don't be, call me, call us, ask questions. We're all available for doing that. So we have some questions or comments. We'll start out with John and then Diane.
Mark, I'm just going to take that point and add to a point that Ben made. Can you pull up your slide 7? Your slide 7.
Oh, okay, hold on.
So Mark, when you talk about...
Speak loudly so everybody can hear you, okay?
So when you talk about zone A, B, and C having releases in the CC plan, Ben talked about the percentage of time over the period of record that we spend in those. So when you model CC and it kicks out the performance output, the time we spend collectively in A, B, and C is 3.8%. So you spend 96.2% of the period of record in 0 releases.
So what John is saying is he said 96% of the time.
Below the yellow line is
So the yellow line on the right and down to the green line, or actually we want to go down to the purple line. That is what they call that operational zone, and we spend 96% of the time here. So if there's, according period of record, if we sometimes get up in those high bands, those maximum bands, then kind of, we've got to discharge to the St. Lucie and Coosatchee for those times.
And the other good news about that point
Because
is
of the
that
health.
when you're in those high bands and the release is calling for 3,200 CFS, in the model output, that's the worst case scenario. Model output assumes a full 3,200. Now when you're actually running this schedule in the real world, the kernel can say, well, the release guidance says up to 3,200, but we can't flood out this neighborhood, or we see a dry season coming or whatever. They can throttle that back, and so this is the worst case scenario. It will invariably be better. One of our exercises was to evaluate the existing conditions model run for a period of 10 years and compare it to actual measured performance, and there was actual measured performance was 17% better than the model. And it's going to be some measure of improvement because, like I said, model runs are the worst case scenario.
All right. We're not going to get into lots of detail, but the idea is, and I'm glad you brought it up because in the schedule they come up with on this, right-hand side of the schedule is up to those amounts. So when they say up to 3,200 CFS or up to 200 CFS, and remember what was said in the lowest part is currently, right now in Laura's schedule, it's 200 to the St. Lucie and 450 to the Coosatchee. Well, a lot of times we don't need it either, and the Coosatchee needs more, so we send 650 that combined CFS over to the Clusacci, and they're happy with it. So there's, yeah, so there are times at that. So, Cor or Eva or Kim, you want to comment on that?
Just really quick.
Yep, yep,
This
Come
can
on.
be really confusing.
Use the
right?
microphone.
that's okay.
Thank
We're here to
Eva.
straighten it out.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ava Velez. I work for the court. Kim's my Everglades sister, so thank you for having me. Okay, so really quick, I just wanted, because we get into zones and we get into work numbers and it's super confusing. So I just wanted to point one thing out. CC, so the lake lives, generally speaking, most of the time between 13 or 12 and 17 feet. 17, super scary. Remember Hurricane Irma? We were all super worried, right? In CC, we're still 0 at 308.
In what zone?
It's not a city.
Right, because that's the yellow line, so just below that.
Okay.
Right, just below that. CC is still sending 0 at 308. It's about to go up, it's about to shoot up. Right, so we are being very deliberate in CC and not sending water to the east. But when we need to, when the lake is rising, when we're in that condition, that we have a storm, just like when the commander was telling everyone, we're gonna hold water back, just this last year, we're gonna hold water back. I think I can make it, I think I can make it, right? He was sitting there saying, I think I can make it, and then we got Ada, and we didn't make it, right? We had to release a little bit. It's a similar kind of thing. Once we need to get up there, we're gonna have to let water out. But
Thank you.
but I'm just trying to make you understand the range, how big zone delta is. Because we get into zone letters and it's confusing. It's as low as, between 13 and 14, and as high as almost 17, and it's 0 to the east.
Through SA.
So when the lake lives in that stage,
308.
it's going 0 to 308. That's what CC looks like right now as we're walking into optimization. I just wanted to make that really, really clear.
Yes.
That was it. Yes, ma'am.
And so are the discharges 6,000 acre CFS, or what are they when you do reach that scary point?
Right.
What are the discharges, and is it like it usually is, which is up to, meaning if they had to open the whole gate up wide in case some disaster, that could happen too?
So we've got Bravo and Charlie, right? The blue and the yellow bands that are skinny. See those right there above the yellow? And I'm sorry that it's confusing that it's called with the line is yellow so that the name is what's above it. Right, so if you find the yellow line and the name is above it, okay, so then you've got the yellow arrow to the right. If we're in the dry season, we still say 0. We're still telling you not the dry season, dry conditions. Kim's about to kill me. She's gonna throw something at me. Wet condition, meaning there's something happening that we think is gonna go up, right? We're always thinking about what's happening in the system. There's people behind this, there's people talking.
So the next level up.
Right, but we're still,
It's wet. You keep
CC
going.
is still not on autopilot, is my point.
Okay.
CC still thinking, what are the conditions? Are the conditions dry? Are they gonna stay dry? Because sometimes we're about to pivot into the dry season. Sometimes it's okay. So we might not have to release, right? So sometimes it's wet and we might need to release, so it would go to 3,600.
Okay.
And sometimes we're about to keep going.
Thank you.
We're about to keep going, it's going away because there's a storm. And it's gonna go to red, and that's zone A. And we need to protect the dike. And that means up to maximum, and that's up to
7,300 CFS on the same as the 9,300.
Can I just ask one quick, where's
So
that?
Max-
Can I just-
Go ahead.
Clarification, so, S308 is for Rialto.
Yes, ma'am.
Where's SVD gonna miss that one?
St. Lucie.
So Fort Winnetka is at the lake
Yeah.
Okeechobee, 25 miles away.
Oh.
And then St. Lucie Locket Dam is over here,
Oh,
just
that's
around,
it.
yeah. So
Okay,
S
thank
eighty
you.
is there, S308 is there.
Thank you.
We'll have another comment or question, I gotta go to some others real quick.
This CC model is the model equivalent of one of the things the city and we all have been pushing for is discharges to the St. Lucie at a last possible resort. And when a storm is bearing down, that's when they're gonna consider those discharges. The Corps has heard us with the CC model, because it's only about 4% of the time it would be in those bands. That's the model equivalent of discharges at a last possible resort.
Okay, thank you.
So what the water management district tested is still pretty low. We're gonna learn about that. We actually are gonna learn about that very soon. So we're looking forward to learning.
Okay.
All right.
Diane, go ahead.
I'm saying Susie Audubon, Conservation Chair, and what I think you ought to know is that the Army Corps cannot fix all of our problems. They are a start. This is a wonderful thing that they're doing, and CC is a great alternative. But we need to work with the state also in demanding that BMP's best management practices are not voluntary, that they are mandatory, and that they are enforced. Okay, which means that the South Florida, all the management districts need to have money to be able to go out there and verify that they are taking place. Another problem is that even though Class AA biosolids is considered a fertilizer, they are not mandating how much can be used. And so they put it down by the ton. And we're not helping either. We have to work in the cities and counties because we are taking ours in most places and sending it up north, putting it by the ton. They wash down into the Kissimmee, that washes down into the lake, and then here we're getting back again. And also sending it to other places. So this is not a good thing either. So,
Thank you.
and certainly, you know, everybody, the South wants water, but they need clean water. So just sending water south is not good enough, and the EAA is not enough to clean it. We also have to ask for these billionaire corporation farms and ranches to take on some of the responsibility. They need water too during our dry season, but they need to have a portion of their own property to hold that water, to clean it, and if they need to release it, to make sure that it is clean
That's right.
before they send it into the canals, where then we get that horrible fertilizer and pesticides and everything else that's in it. So
Thanks for bringing those up, appreciate it.
we need this to be worked on too. We need to do something also. We have about 1,000 people coming down to Florida to live here every day. We need to make sure that all of our municipalities put in some new rules to have less grass, more trees and shrubs on the properties, and we need to do it ourselves. The monoculture of glass is no longer considered a good thing. We have to make sure that even though we're saying 4 months you can't fertilizer, it really needs to be almost all year long.
Thank you. Those are all great and very specific messages, particularly about water quality. Water quality is an issue that neither the Corps nor the district, that actually the Florida DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, has to work with. And she mentioned FDACS, the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. As Jackie keeps pointing out, part of the Northern Everglades and Estuaries Protection Plan that the legislature put forward in the district is implementing it along with the other two partners, which is FDEP and FDACS. So the district and those other two have to implement this plan, and it has to consider water quality and all those runoffs that are coming into the watershed, exactly as you're mentioning, both biosolids, everything, all of that pollution coming in, causing algae blooms and so forth. It has to
I
be-
mean, even the pollution.
And even the discharges
mine
going
so
south.
much water if it was
And
cleaner.
quantity off the
So-
power lines.
So quantity is coming off as well. So we gotta store and treat that, require them to store and treat it. Thanks for those inputs. We got a couple more and we gotta move on, but let's have, okay. Joe, and then-
I just have a question, maybe it's because I'm slow, I don't know.
That's
My name's
okay.
Richard Hall, River Warrior. I always hear, since I've been coming to the meetings, we can't send water south because of sugar and the farms are filling up the STAs. Can't send it south. So they're gonna be doing the same thing. How are they gonna send the water south?
That's a good point. Good question, and I'm glad you asked it, Richard. I
You know,
didn't plan
and I
that.
haven't heard anything in a long while about
Yeah.
the reservoir.
Well, the reservoir is kind of moving forward. It's underway. The district started the work. The Congress is authorizing the plans to go forward, and appropriations are going forward, but that's gonna take a long time. What can happen operationally is exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And if you look at last water year, the district has these presentations every month by the staff, and thank you, Jackie, for asking for that to be shown, is how much water out of the Everglades agricultural basin of runoff, basin runoff, goes through the STAs and south of the Everglades compared to the lake. The comparison for last water year was that 1.6 million acre feet from the EA basin runoff went south through the STAs and water conservation areas, and only 160,000 acre feet came from the lake. Very inequitable. We need that capacity through the STAs and into the water conservation areas and the Everglades to be coming from the lake. And we need to require that they store and treat their water on their own properties for the EA basin runoff. We can't continue that water control plan for the EA basin runoff and at the same time try to send the water south. And Jackie asked the question of Jennifer Reynolds at the staff presentation last Thursday at the governing board meeting and said, why can't we send it south? She says there are constraints, and those constraints are just what you said. The water conservation area is full, the Everglades are full because of the basin runoff from the EA. That's what's happening, and we got to get a handle on that in order so this plan can work and send more water south, going south.
Who controls
Thank
the
you.
use of the EAs?
Well, that's,
I'm sorry, the STAs.
the STAs are within the district, within the water management district. Yes.
Can I give an update on the reservoir?
Yes, quick update on the reservoir.
Very quick.
Okay, quick update on the reservoir.
The Army Corps of Engineers
Use the microphone.
has started construction on the EAA reservoir in
Do you mind going
2021.
to the thing just so it's recorded for
Yes.
everybody to hear? Sorry.
Real quick.
Thanks so much.
The Army Corps of Engineers Jacksonville District received $350 million in our president's budget for ecosystem restoration. We received 80% of the entire nation's budget
Wow.
for ecosystem restoration for the Everglades. And a large portion of that money will go to begin construction on the EAA reservoir by the Army Corps of Engineers in 2021.
Wow.
So that's our update.
Yay. So I want to thank our panel and all. We do have this statement that we are going to be sending to the Corps from the Rivers Coalition. If you want to bring that up again. But it basically says that we're requesting the Army Corps of Engineers to optimize alternative CC by further reducing harm to the St. Lucie estuary. Any Lake Okeechobee regulatory releases to St. Lucie above 0 CFS represent harm, and for that reason, it's critical to keep S308 flows to a minimum in the Lake Okeechobee system operating manual. To accomplish this, we request the Corps to do these 5 different things here. Number 1 is remove the zone F, remove that beneficial use zone and expand zone D all the way down to the water shortage line in order to send more water south and send beneficial dry season flows to the Caloosahatchee. Use the extra capacity to reduce those damaging lake discharges to both the St. Lucie and the Caloosahatchee. Number 2 is to maintain 0 discharges to the St. Lucie and zone D. Number 3, do everything the core power to avoid increasing regulatory releases above volumes proposed in alternative CC is currently drafted. Number 3 is address the algae bloom risk to the estuaries by incorporating that operational flexibility that allows the Corps not to discharge when doing so and risk transferring that algae from the lake to the estuaries. And lastly, work closely with the Water Management District to ensure that southward flows aren't needlessly constrained by outdated water supply assumptions, what we just talked about in the EA. So we are sending that up. If you have any big angst or objections to it, speak now, but I think we ought to get it forward, get it going. And I encourage each and every organization of the coalition to be here on the 27th, talk to the Colonel Kelly, and also to make comments about LOSM between now and that time, when October 15th, when they're gonna finalize stuff. And they're trying to optimize this over this next month in August, so we gotta get in, get our voices in, make our voices heard to do that.
Can I ask a question?
Okay,
Jeremy,
real
for
quick.
people? Is there any downside to removing Zone F?
Downside to removing this beneficial
The
use
benefit,
on
the beneficial
hallway,
use.
so it goes to the water short.
Why have it?
Only if you're an EAA farmer.
Well, I
Are there any, are the slides back?
This
are
one
the
here,
slides still on?
just removing that green
No,
line.
I understand the question very clearly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take this one. Can I see the radar chart?
Oh, the rate, yep. Very good.
Okay, so this is a way to think about this. Have you heard the Colonel's metaphor about the string?
Yes.
Okay, so CC is the red line. And think of the red line as a string that goes around the outside. And the string is only a certain length. When you pull that string, something else has to give. It doesn't get longer. So Zone F has the possibility of doing really good things for sending water south, sending water west, and then depending on what else we pair with it, by itself, it could reduce water supply performance, meaning it could have less water supply for the Seminole tribe of Florida that depends on Lake Okeechobee for their Brighton and Big Cypress reservations, as well as the Lake Okeechobee service area, right, which is the city of Okeechobee, the EAA, and other communities that depend on Lake Okeechobee. And I'm trying to think of what else. And so we are trying to be very deliberate now. It's very important that any movement, we talk about what comes with it, right? So we're all talking together about what it means.
And the lake itself.
And the lake itself, thank you. So when I think of it, is sometimes we make one movement and it causes a shift that we might be undesirable. But sometimes we can make another shift that together maybe is a good overall holistic improvement. And so that's what we're looking for. I appreciate this list. I was trying to read it very carefully. You guys have an amazing team that gives us very detailed input. And that's what we need right now. We need detailed input. Because an improvement sometimes comes with a trade-off, and we need that discussion. It's a hard discussion, but it's very important.
Okay. We gotta kinda get wrapping up. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jackie.
Eva, is there a number for, for water supply? Like, is it, do you think in general terms, like, 2 feet of the lake is water supply? Or is that hard to do because of evaporation and other things like, the number doesn't stay the same all the time? I mean, that's always what's so hard for me to understand, like, how much needs to be on the lake for water supply?
That's such a great question, because I wish for the same thing, because I'm an engineer and I love water budgets, and I wish everything just added all perfectly. And so unfortunately, We don't have a number like that that's set for Lake Okeechobee, because Lake Okeechobee is interconnected to a 3.5 million acre watershed, right? And sometimes it depends on where it rains, what the demands are. So we use that word demand. So think of it, the city of Stuart, every one of you uses water. And when you're talking about your new well that you're trying to drill for the Floridan,
Yes.
right? Every single spigot that you turn on, that's turned into a demand by your engineers, right? Same thing on land, right? So every piece of land that's connected to the watershed, that's connected to Lake Okeechobee, whether it's on the Brighton Reservation by the Seminole Tribe of Florida, or whether it's connected to the EAA or anywhere else in the watershed, that translates to a demand, a need of water. Sometimes rainfall meets that demand, and sometimes rainfall's not enough. And so there's a supplemental need, a demand that comes from the lake, that's met by the lake. And that changes over time, depending on what happened. And so that need from the lake, there are average annual numbers we can come up with, right? But there aren't Lake Okeechobee because of the way that Congress gave the Corps our authority. They said all of your project purposes matter in a way that you have to balance. They didn't give us pieces of the lake and broke them apart and say this piece belongs to this and that piece belongs to that. Some of our reservoirs in the nation have that.
Really?
Yeah, some of our reservoirs in the nation have contracts that say this piece of the reservoir belongs, this space, let's say, this space in the reservoir has a contract for this. Lake Okeechobee doesn't work like that. The Congress said all 5 project purposes belong in here. So that's how come that question is so hard to answer, is because all 5 project purposes belong in that space.
Thanks.
Thanks for answering it. So,
And poor Mark.
no, I appreciate it, but we're kind of running out of time, but we want to try to flip through real quick any other government agency reports, anything else, highlights from Martin County, City of Stuart, or State of Florida. We want to also mention, particularly on the Water Management District, there was the governing board meeting on the 15th, but this coming month there is a workshop and a governing board meeting. So that'll be August 11th and then August 12th. So August 11th, the workshop is 1 to 1 p.m. and then the regular governing board is the next day on the 12th. So stay tuned for those and find out more information about their Commissioner Mess.
Just
Yeah.
want to mention the Dredge Coast Waterway cleanup. This is occurring this week.
This Saturday, yeah.
This Saturday, but you can go out and clean up and enter your trash all week and do it virtually or in person this Saturday. City of Stuart is one of the hosts at Apex Marine, north of the Roosevelt Bridge, just south of the North Court near the Deck Restaurant. We'll be there from 9 to 12. Also, Indian River Keeper is there at Jensen Beach Causeway, 9 to 12, which I'm happy to be a board member of. So anywhere you are, you can find a location or participate virtually and just go and log your data virtually and help clean up our river. It's something we all can do locally to affect
Or on
change
your
right
boat.
now. Exactly. There's a flyer right behind Mr. Perry.
So, yep. So come on in and help clean up our waterways. I do want to
Hello,
mention.
everybody. This is Todd Thurlow.
sorry.
I'm not going to be able to make the meeting
Sorry.
tomorrow, but I just wanted
Sorry.
to submit my
Sorry, how do I stop
graph and satellite imagery report.
Can we hold off on Todd?
Yeah, I didn't, sorry, I'm just queuing him up.
So our local reports are basically our water quality is doing okay. It's not as good as it has been in the last couple of weeks, but just to report, I mean, the Roosevelt Bridge right here, the salinities are around 10 to 12 parts per thousand. It's pretty low comparatively, and also in the outer estuary around the seagrass areas of the Prairie Bridge, it's 20 to 25 parts per thousand, where normally it's up to the 30s. So what's happening is we're getting rain runoff, as you can hear rain right now, and the C23, C24, C25, and Gordy Road structure, 10 Mile Creek, are all discharging close to 900 to 1,000 CFS right now. So even though we're not getting anything from S308 or SAE from the lake discharges, we are getting discharges coming from the sea canal. So there's water coming into the estuary, basin runoff, and all these kind of runoff from the tidal basin. And we are getting some upwelling blooms actually reported this week for a couple of days from cold water upwellings along the beach. And we're getting a microalgae bloom if you're out there at the beach and you see greenish water on the ocean side. Don't get alarmed, it's not microcystin. It's kind of an upwelling from the nutrients, cold water up to the shallow waters. And it's cooler and it's causing a slight of a bloom. It always kind of happens in later July, actually. It's kind of a regular seasonal phenomenon.
Mark, does that have an odor?
Yes, it does have an odor. So if you're out there at the beach and you kind of, this kind of strange odor and it's greenish color, don't get alarmed. It's kind of happening. You won't get toxins. And we haven't seen big microcystin blooms reducing on the lakes and that. I don't know if we don't really have a lot of time unless you want
We can do Todd's, yeah.
We do Todd's
Yeah.
real quick. Is it real
Yeah.
quick?
Actually,
And then logistically wrap up. Yeah,
I
go
just
ahead.
have
Barry.
one, first of all, Mark has a real full-time job, and I just want to let everybody know that FOS is incredible.
The Eco
Everybody-
Ocean Center, Ocean Eco Center.
And you need to go out and promote it, take your kids there, become a member, and I congratulate Mark.
We just opened last Friday.
He won't say it, but it's actually incredible.
All right, go ahead and roll Todd's report real quick and then it'll hopefully stop raining. We can
Todd Thurlow.
be pre-recorded.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, this is Todd Thurlow. I'm not going to be able to make the meeting tomorrow, but I just wanted to submit my seagrass and satellite imagery report for tomorrow's meeting. It's almost midnight, so the lake's right now at 13.5, but that's midnight is when they set the reports for the lake level. So you might see that on tomorrow's report at, what did I just say, 13.5 feet. By the way, something's wrong with the graph that they showed the lake stages. This has happened before where the forecast is overlaying the graph, so you can't really see where we are on this. The lake did bottom out at 12.49 feet, so we're about, just about exactly a foot above where we bottomed out on June, this is actually midnight, June 15th, on the June 16th report. Another place where you can see that on my website is if you go to the live data, there's a hydrograph from the South Florida Water Management District, which will give you that in an interactive form. So here it is right there, July 20th. And you've got 13.48, so we're just above the low line as of the 20th. And so we're probably going to be right on the line again tomorrow. So to the seagrass update, there was an imagery pass of the Sentinel satellite on the 19th, on July 19th. So the seagrasses seem to be